The book of Genesis contains a mystery in religious genre that is mythology. There's a couple of templates in there, and I can extract those. I can show you what's there. I'm going to tell you how this is going to work. First of all, understanding Genesis is going to be strange. If you hear this, you're going to be like, wow, I never even considered that before. This is something that is different. It is not religion. It's not looking outward. It's not looking to a God. There is something nested in here that is different, held in verbiage in such a way that the masses are going to carry it. But let me tell you something, that this is, what is in here is not plain language. The story is written in a way that, doesn't it sound weird? We're talking about material that is thousands of years old in a culture that this was their media. We read it today like, oh yeah, I spent a half an hour after watching some television shows and after getting home from work and things like that. They didn't do any of that. This was their media, every bit of it. Calling it simple it doesn't give them much credit. These stories are complicated. Now, what I have found is that there are a number of mystical styles of verse. And let's do an experiment here. I'm going to grab an Aesop's fable because this is not religious at all. This is what is happening. There are stories that contain elements, that there is something nested inside of it that needs to be extracted. And Genesis is the same way. Something needs to be extracted from there. In this example, very quick, let me just go through the motions of reading the whole, the hare and the tortoise. It's a very short. If you haven't heard it before, here it is. If you do, just bear with me. If you have. A hare was one day making fun of a tortoise for being so slow upon his feet. Wait a minute, said the tortoise. I'll run a race with you, and I'll wager that I win. Oh, well, replied the hare, who was much amused with the idea. Let's try and see. And it was soon agreed that the fox should set a course for them and be the judge. When the time came, both started off together, but the hare was soon so far ahead that he thought he might as well have a rest. So down he lay, and fast asleep he fell. Meanwhile, the tortoise kept plodding on and in time reached the goal. At last, the hare woke up with a start and dashed on at his fastest, only to find the tortoise had already won the race. Then we're told a moral here. It's slow and steady that wins the race. These are all stories, fables that are all like that. Fables are teaching stories about the person's life that feature animals as analogous terms. So this is about us. It's not about the animals. However, if you were not to interpret this, if you were to just at some point in time read it as if it was historical, reading Genesis, looking at Genesis, for me, watching theists and atheists go at Genesis is akin to watching people argue about whether or not, what kind of hare it was, what kind of tortoise. Was the fox even really there? Well, I mean, what kind of a species was that? That is, what did God get these from? And what kind of relationship did they have with God? They're creating this entire dialogue as to why this race would have happened and why it would have worked out, while atheists will be saying, yeah, that's stupid. It never happened. Meanwhile, slow and steady wins the race escapes both of them. There's something in there that nobody's seeing. Genesis, same way. Theist, atheist, there's something in there. You're not seeing it. It's a template. If you have looked at material from antiquity, and we probably, most of us know about the similarities that there are from material from antiquity, this is why they're sharing the template. Everywhere this template exists. And Genesis is going to be no more unique at the template level than Hinduism or Greek myth. Okay, think about this. If you step back from it, there's one cosmic reality that, well, no matter what people think or believe, there is a cosmic reality. The bottom line to everything. That's what this template is, the bottom line to everything. All of the religions, myths are carrier vehicles for the population of, you know what, there's metaphor upon metaphor in here. The ark story, the story of the ark, it's carried by people but looked in by very few. That is a story that is very interactive. The ark is the story itself. That's a story about the story carrying something that is inside. And that's analogous to the story itself. There's something hidden inside. It's carried by most people, but accessed by very few. That's what we're doing. We're going to access this. We're going to enter the narrow gate. We're going to do a number of things that sound like, wait a minute, isn't that religious? They're all going to be psychological. Those are analogous terms meant to carry it. Remember, the same teaching appears in Buddhism and Taoism and Hinduism and Greek myth. So those terms that we're using here can be all kinds of different terms. We have to divorce ourselves from the sound of them. But as we move along, we'll continue to do that. It takes a little bit to get here. Let's do a couple of things. I want to go through a little bit of an an interpretation process and show you how it's working mentally. So as we move into Genesis, it becomes a little bit more familiar. But I'm also going to do something different. I'm going to teach the template. I found the template by going from outside into the material. I continued to figure out what's going on. But you know what? The creation story is true. However, it's analogous. It is not the creation of the universe and the cosmos. It is the creation of each individual. My universe, my cosmos, your universe, your cosmos. When creation begins, that is each one of us. That's our birth. The birth of the universe is the birth of my universe, my experience, my exposure to the universe. And that is what is nested in the stories. When it starts right there, the way that it's held in terms, people go, oh, wow, this is magical. It really happened this way. When in all actuality, you look at it and go, no, you can't. You can't say that it happened that way. That's where the theism and the atheism comes into play. This must be true. Yeah, I was told this and I believe this and I don't even care what anybody else is coming up with. That is theism. At the worst. I'm not picking on everybody here, and I'm speaking in terms that are kind of general. I don't mean everybody. There's variations across the board. Okay, I want to do something else. There's another Aesop's fable I'm going to connect with Jesus's work, and we're going to interpret that and see how this process is working. What I'm doing is grabbing everything I can from antiquity and picking through it all. Sometimes you find a step here that's not very complete, but you find that same step in 10 different places and look at each one of them, analyze it, you get a better picture of what's going on. So that's what we're doing, is grabbing as many pieces and parts as possible and averaging it out and taking a look at it, but it all plays out mentally and it is all going to be demonstrable. You don't have to listen to me and go, oh, that's what he says. You will be able to listen and go, oh, yes, I can work that through in my own mind as well. I can see how that works. Suddenly we're in a different class. We're not listening to people tell us what to do. We are finding what is there. We are seeing it and interacting with it ourselves. Let me make sure I'm clear. All of the teaching has interactive steps in there, things that are teaching us about us. There's something in there. Okay, I'm going to jump to another Aesop's fable that we'll read it and then compare it with something that we find in the Gospel of Thomas and talk about that for a little bit. They're very close. All right. From Aesop's Fables. The Dog in the Manger. A dog was lying in a manger on the hay which had been put there for the cattle, and when they came and tried to eat, he growled and snapped at them and wouldn't let them get at their food. What a selfish beast, said one of them to his companions. He himself can't eat, and yet he won't let those eat who can. Okay, sounds kind of weird. Dog is guarding the hay. Interesting. That's supposed to be interactive? All right, somehow this means something to me. How do I figure out what that is? Remembering it, this is my media. I got all day to think about this. All day, all week, all month, all the next 20 years. I can do whatever I want. I don't have a lot of stories. We're passing them around. Okay, we have that kind of time. We need to figure out what we're doing. And people can figure this out. There is help in here. Let's jump to Jesus. Jesus said, Woe to the Pharisees, for they are like a dog sleeping in the manger of oxen, for neither does he eat, nor does he let the oxen eat. Okay, one of the things we can tell right off the bat there is Aesop's Fables is probably about 500 years older than the works attributed to Jesus. So we can, on one hand, we can see that the Gospel of Thomas is a collection from other places, that it's not an individual, unique work, that it has things from other places. This is obviously from Aesop's Fables. From Aesop's Fable, it's hard to tell, but here, as we put it into this, and I'm already privy to the inside of the material, so I know what the Pharisees are. In their time, the Pharisees were the teachers of the Jewish material that are telling people, here's how you decode it, here's how you... Scribes and Pharisees, those are people that in biblical times were Hebrews that were explaining the Torah. Remembering now the Bible had not been made, the New Testament had not emerged yet. So there were writings beginning to emerge and Jesus' works beginning to emerge at that time, collections from other places. But this has actually been going on since Sumerian Babylonia. So nothing new is happening here. It's just a place where it's transforming again. Okay, in their day and age, the Pharisees are the people, again, culture doesn't read, doesn't write, we're not educated, we don't go to school, there isn't any school, but we're storytelling culture. We're intelligent, but we need somebody to read it for us and tell us what's there. And then this is some weird stuff, then to explain it to us. Who are they? They're the preachers. They're the people telling people, this is what the Bible says. Here's how you live it. Here's how you experience life with it. There's nothing wrong with that, is there? What is a Pharisee then? Jesus is woe to the Pharisees. He's got something, he's putting them down for some reason. And why would that be? If Jesus is upholding Jewish law and everything like that, that the Pharisees aren't bad guys. Here's the deal. This is why it works out this way. The Pharisees, once you turn it inward, become a different component part. You are the one that is looking to eat. This story plays out in the psyche. We become component parts of this, but there's a transition happening here. Eating is something in the spiritual world that we want to do. That means learning, consuming, understanding, grasping. It's not a physical thing in this. It is a physical thing. Yes, it is. But it translates into the psyche as an analogous term meaning something different. It's still carrying the idea that I'm going to consume. However, it's carried in that way. So what we have right here is the oxen are the people who are trying to learn. They want to know, and the Pharisees don't know. They're teaching what the Bible says. They don't know the template. So interestingly, if you translate this, the Pharisee is anybody who believes in the material, teaches the material, preaches the material. Even if they're a 10-year-old kid telling their friend, Jesus loves you, it says so in the Bible, they're the Pharisees. They are not the ones who are understanding what is there. They are like the dog in the manger. The cows want to eat, they want to consume, but they can't because the dog is preventing them from getting into it. So they're not learning what they need to learn in the spiritual world because the people don't know it. They don't know, and they don't teach it to us. So suddenly we've looked at this and realized we got to go on our own on this path. We're not looking to learn from other people, preachers, teachers, things like that. All they're doing is trying to explain why that cryptic verse must make sense in a world back then without realizing, hey, there's something in there. The stories aren't going to make sense. You're going to have to work, and it's still going to be like, well, how come things could happen then that can't happen now? We have to continually make up why stuff was. We don't need to do that. These stories are made at that time to go into their population. We just need to find the template. The template becomes something that's a little bit bigger, and that's what I want to move on to now because that's what we're going to be going after in Genesis. But this is the kind of mental process we're going to be using as we go through this. However, it's going to get more complicated. What I'm going to tell you is that every bit of Genesis, like this, plays out in the psyche. Every bit of it. But how do we get there? We have to start here. We'll go right to the core. This is the inside. Sometime long ago, masters started right from this. They knew people needed to learn. They knew they had to teach this process, and they knew that people were not going to pass it around because it's too hard to do. And it's for the few people that are going to do it. Meanwhile, it's put in packages that are going to be carried around the entire world. Who did that? The template's there, but it's all over the place. Here is what it is based on. Okay, this is your life. Watch. First of all, we develop in utero. Mother's pregnant, we're in darkness. Then we are born. And when we're born, there's a couple of things that we need to discuss right here. When we're born, we have certain brain things that are already in place. Genetic things like that, sexual preferences, bunches of things that we're born with that just create the variation of life. Billions of people, billions of differences. We are born with certain characteristics that we're going to live with. Nothing you can do about that. It's a part of you. That is there to begin with. Also, at that point in time, we are not aware. We are not developed enough. We are born so infant that unlike other creatures, we're not even self-aware. We can't ask. We're so reliant on somebody still. It's almost like we could still be in utero if we were in the animal kingdom. We're not developed very much. We can't get up and take care of ourselves. We are very reliant. And that goes on for a number of years where we haven't made the brain connections. We're going to become incredibly complicated creatures, and it's going to take a lot of brain connections. And we've got the brains to do it, but it takes time. It takes life experience. At first you don't know you're eating mashed banana. But eventually you get to a point where you know that you're eating a banana. You can ask for a banana. You want that banana. You even know that it's yellow and that it's sweet. We begin to learn things from when we're first born that we don't know to later we do know. We are wiring our brain. We are developing at that point in time. And that during this development time, we're not wired to the world. We're just living our kid experiences, having fun doing the things we're doing. Normal kid stuff. We have kind of open, you're not judging the world. We're at a point where it's kind of mental bliss, except that we're not very aware of it. Eventually what happens, though, is we begin to experience life and we begin to see hurt. We feel hurt. We experience hurt. We see somebody else's hurt. And we begin judging and going, oh my gosh, look at that. Those people this and those people, yeah, that experience. Oh, now I've had this happen. I'm going to carry that shame. We begin to start accumulating life experiences that could be from anywhere in the world. At that point in time, we're going to start just having life experiences. But when we have those life experiences, we're going to be consciously judging that life experience, feeling the emotional state of it, and storing it away and wiring ourselves. And that's going to become a part of who and what we are. The emotion and the memory of that is now beginning to develop as a part of our core being. We don't know that. We're looking at life and we're judging it. We don't understand cause and effect or anything at that point in time. This is just what's happening. But that is a part of the teaching, cause and effect. There's a couple of things that it's going to teach us in the beginning too, is that when we have experiences that are of a certain hurtful nature and they're not dealt with, that they're going to continue to emerge and hurt us. They're going to be cyclical in nature. But they're also going to be of the nature of the experience. If it was a shameful experience, we're going to continue to experience something that emerges of that shame. If it's hatred, if it's whatever it is, the nature of what it is that is stored away is going to continue to act out. And that as it continues to act out, we continue to have more life experiences. It actually gets stronger. It's as if we're practicing it unbeknownst to us. We don't want to deal with it. We don't like it. We want it put away. Or sometimes maybe we're not even aware of the fact that we're fine and happy with the fact that, yeah, I hate those people over there. And you might think there's nothing wrong with me. I hate those people. So what? There's a lot of people like that. We're kind of extracting ourselves from hatred or anything like that. We're trying to find something different going on. We don't want to become products of that kind of thinking, but that's exactly what happens. We become products of the manner in which we have thought our life experiences and the manner that we continue to hold them emotionally. And that those can get really bad and out of control. And as life goes on, every time something happens, we can make a decision. Should I decide a good thing or bad thing? There's a duality coming into play. Cycles are coming into play. The idea that we are now developing and being able to make our own decisions about what life experiences are, and we become those products and we move out in life. We fit into places. It continues to grow. It gets more and more. There's this entire developed thing inside of us, and it's variable. Not everybody goes this course. But at some point in time, a person could look at their life and go, it is completely out of control. I'm freaked. We can watch the world. I see people out there that are living completely through life experiences. They haven't stepped back. That's what we have to do, is disconnect from that. Living through that would be akin to just your entire world is out of control. You might even be religious in the midst of that. They are. They're carrying crosses. They believe in God. It's about the inner being. What are we carrying up here? All of the pieces and parts are going to fit up into the psyche. Let me not go there yet. That's basically it. We're born. We start out empty. We start out happy kids. We eventually begin to experience life. We become products of what we and the manner in which we store those life experiences. As life goes on, we have, if you take the bad course, if we come from a place where later we're looking for enlightenment because we are hurt, this is for us, okay? That's what is nested in the template. But it's also for anybody. It's letting us know that we are products of our life experiences and the way that we've judged them. that we have certain things to begin with, cyclically things are going to continue to come out. That is what is going to be held in the creation story in incredibly analogous terms. We start out in a void. We have a mind develop along the way. God names everything to begin with. That means we're born with things that we can't manipulate. Remember, God is an analog here. We're not going to use God. We're looking at the template. God is a way to carry the idea that from the great beyond, you emerge with something that you got no control over. There it is. It's a higher being. It's a higher self. This is a part where we emerge from, and we're always connected with that. Oh, and that also that our life is going to flow, or that it's going to be graced. It's going to flow in a certain way based on what we're holding. When we have a lot of bad stuff, life continues to be bad. When we have good stuff, life continues to be good. We get on courses that are based on the energy of what we're holding up here, but we think it's all out there. We don't know to turn inward. We have to do that. That's entering the narrow gate. Okay, the creation story then, as I get into it, and I'm going to detail it a lot more, but just as an overview right now, it's going to start out where every person's conscious is Adam. Everyone is Adam. That's your conscious. It's an analogous term. Yeah, sounded almost like a stutter. All right, it's an analogous term. All of it is. Everything are analogs. We're looking at putting all of this in the psyche and understanding that the story is built in such a way that it's going to carry that template. And what we extract the template, it's going to, all those parts that are carrying it are going to represent something that's actually in the human, in the psyche. The story is built on the human life cycle. That's where the template comes from. We don't adjust to the template. The template is based on our life. Being born, starting out, I got off track there. The emergence of the higher and the lower, the conscious, the subconscious, the lower being. We're developing a hierarchy of what's going to happen up here. There's a higher being, the part of us that can look at ourselves. We can all get there. You look at it and go, boy, why am I do that? I can see I don't need to do that. Yeah, I don't need to feel that way. That's our higher being, but then we slip right back into our conscious being in the experience. We slip right back into the experiences, and we're not paying it. We don't know that. We don't know that. Once we know that, we can see that and go, oh, okay, that's the God. When I'm healing with God, that's my conscious and my higher being working together instead of my conscious winning and saying, I'm not going to feel that. I don't like it. The higher being is going, yeah, you got to look at this stuff. You have to emerge it. You have to heal in some way. And you don't heal by ignoring the stuff. You heal by bringing it into the light. I'm going off here again. The creation still, if we're looking at Genesis, seeds are created that give life to plants that grow fruits of seeds of the same nature, cause and effect right there. Whatever plants in our garden is going to continue to emerge in that same way right there. It's going to happen in cycles. The upper and the lower cycles are going to happen. Things in the mind, the birds, the air, we're going to lose track of stuff. We name it all. That is us deciding what we like, what we don't like. We are naming our life experiences. This is a common teaching in all religions, that we name things to begin with. Somewhere in the beginning, we name things, and then we begin to have experiences based on what we have named. And naming means, I hate that. I'm ashamed of that. I hate you. That is naming it right there. We're creating it. We're creating that and planting that in our garden at that time, and it's going to continue to emerge that way. That there is our subconscious emerged from us. Eve. Everybody has an Adam. Everybody has an Eve. That is the subconscious. Now we're creating the hierarchy. But Eve is going to be subservient. Not because Eve in the world needs to be subservient. It's a mental hierarchy. The conscious decides what goes on. Eve, the subconscious, has no choice. That's where it gets stored. Those become the offspring. Analogs. They're stored concepts that are going to continue to act out of their own nature. But at first, before we get there, it's just setting up how it's going to work. At some point, 7 is being used as a term that's going to continue to emerge later. 7 specifically means something as an analogous term at this point in time in Jewish material. And this is naked, unashamed, and in the Garden of Eden at day 7. This is conscious and subconscious coexisting in complete happiness and bliss. We're self-aware, we're little kids, we're having a good time. That's right there. Then we begin to experience life, and something hurts, and we put that away. That's Eve being tempted by the serpent. That is not really the subconscious being tempted. What is happening? Our conscious is putting in. We're the ones deciding the quality of something at the time it happens. The man's in charge of the woman. That's the only way that works. Until you get to, the people that don't figure it out and they just continue to, all right. That's why it works and it carries. It fits. But what happens when we do sin then? We begin to, we feel like we need to cover ourselves. Why would that be? I realize I am naked. That's kind of silly. Should we be naked? Think that through. This is spiritual. Naked is an analog. What am I covering myself with? When I'm a little kid, I'm not covered with anything. I don't have any shame. I don't have anything to hide. I don't lie. Nothing like that. I don't have anything to fear. Only later do I begin putting that on, and that's analogous for beginning to cover oneself. Now I'm covering myself, and God, the higher being, says, you're out of the garden now. What does that mean? We've lost our bliss. We're no longer that happy kid. We're not kicked out someplace, but this is a real story that is playing out in the human mind. Then what happens? We have offspring. One kills the other. Things start off bad. It doesn't take long when we see branches happening, and not long there's something from the higher realm coming down to the lower realm, which is analogous to now our characteristics. The daughters, those are the offspring of our. Those right there are our qualities to begin with. That is like our curiosity, our open-mindedness, our sense of joy, our capacity to laugh at, just all of that stuff right there. They're not corrupted at first, but something comes down and intermingles with them, has sex with them and hurts them. And that is analogous to the idea that life is going on and we're beginning to have experiences and we're losing those qualities. We become hurt. We become angry. We lash out. Then eventually our whole world gets so bad that this is analogous to it's getting flood time here. The world is so out of control. And that means that we have lost touch with that earlier self. That's all. We have to divorce ourselves from the idea that this is some sort of a sinful thing. That's buried in very carefully. And people accept that. Sin is derogatory concepts. The things we want to resolve are the things that are hurting us. All of these things that are bad in the world that need to get drowned out represent our earlier self. Now what happens? Noah gets called on the hero's journey, the very first one. So we just finished the creation myth. That creation myth happens in Genesis. It happens it happens everywhere. Every teaching starts off with a creation because it starts off with how we came about. That's a part of the template. Sometimes it's incredibly short. Sometimes it gets more detailed like this. Genesis is a big story. It's a big vehicle. It's a genre of carrying this template that works different in the population than something smaller would. Storytelling culture. Emergent people all over the place. You got to develop something. You got to figure out how to get people working, that they're warring, they're taking things from each other, or reproducing. Humanity is emerging very big at that time, and things need to be in place to help manage that. And I'm going to suggest that's what this is. But So that pattern that I'm talking about there, you can see that in Genesis as, Cain and Abel started getting kicked out of the garden, losing your happiness. Then it splits off. Then it gets bigger. Then it finally has to get wiped out. That is a pattern that's going to continue to emerge. It'll get off to something like short pieces like Joshua and Jericho, where they go and there's a city that is an evil city containing all the evil. They march around it 7 times. Remember, the 7 is created back there. That's when we're naked in the garden. Jericho represents our old structure, and you circle around it and destroy it. And of course they say, well, we found Jericho, it's burnt. Yeah, so Jericho burns, it's there, and they say, here's a perfect analog. Go ahead and build it on this story. It's pretty simple to see why it is in there without it having happened. It's an analogous story that's built on that same template. It's telling us to get back to our early selves, to go back, to let these things go, to disconnect from them, to get back to that point where we're happy in the garden. Jesus is going to later tell us, I don't remember if it's in the Bible anywhere, but I know it's in the Gospel of Thomas, but that an old man would ask a child 7 days old where to go and what is the 7 days? There's another one where Jesus says, ask a child 7 days old. They're all referencing, the sevens are referencing this point where we're disconnected from things. We're no longer judging that. We're understanding that whatever we are seeing in life, I'm getting into the hero's journey now. Creation actually is right there. Everybody goes through creation. When you get to the point where the flood needs to happen, that is describing a worst case scenario from somebody who came up through, hurt and abuse and problems and just has issues. It's a pathway for us to get out. There are people who get to this point in creation and it won't fit the story. In fact, when Cain and Abel happened, they took a different direction. They didn't get here. They didn't have a world that needed to be wiped out. So now it's a different, you know what though? The ark is still something they will carry, even if they don't need to use the template. The ark is very versatile. The ark will be used by many people, while few will open it up and see inside. Many are called, few chosen. Those are common themes throughout the material. Not very many people go. There's something different. I don't know what. And I'm putting it in public because I'm finding it, and it's like pretty cool. But I think that, I think it's evident that Genesis is based on that. I'm going to also say this. Do you know that before that before Eve, the story in the Hebrew material at that time had a previous wife, Lilith. And Lilith wanted to be above Adam or equal to Adam. And I won't get into that whole story, but Lilith had to be gone and then Eve came about. The story structure was still okay at that time as far as the template. As far as the template goes, what that is doing is setting up the mental hierarchy, that the conscious is going to be over the subconscious. The male is going to be over the female. That's not a world thing. I mean, life kind of works that way, so it's an easy analog. You know what? The Eve, you're going to continue to experience increasing pain in childbirth. That is where it's telling us that whatever you have stored inside of you is going to continue to emerge. Whatever you have, whatever hurt we have put away, now that we are getting punished, it's going to continue to emerge. But what does it say? It's going to get worse. What happens in real life? Women have 10 kids. I think the first one's painful. This is not my department, but if you read and look into it, you hear women say, oh, by the 10th one, they just pop right out. I don't know that. But if you look at it, you go, well, it looks like actually it doesn't get more and more painful as time goes on. It gets less painful. However, if you play it out in the psyche and you say, okay, this is Eve and the offspring is this, and as I go on, it gets worse, it gets harder, then it works. That's our punishment. That's our cyclical punishment right there. Yeah. That's how the story works. Anyway, I kind of went all over the place with this. This is just kind of a setup as I'm getting ready. When I get into Genesis, I'll reference this one to start with to kind of give a big overview. But every bit of that is going to play out in the psyche. Adam and Eve, offspring, all of that are parts of us. Noah is who we are if we decide later on in life, now I'm going on the hero's journey. My earlier self has got to be destroyed. I'm going to be my new self now. And I'm going to take things with me. And on the other side, I'm going to start over again. It's a viable story. A true story? Whew. It's a viable story. It's carrying a message on the template about inner cleansing, rebirth, forgiveness. Yeah. Held in a way that the population's going to carry. Because if you told them straight up, this is what it is, they'd say, I ain't doing that. I'm not forgiving anybody. They hurt me. We're the ones that realize, oh, the cyclical pain keeps happening because I'm carrying it. I have to turn inward. I got to weed my garden. I understand that what is coming out of me is of the nature of what I've got stored away. We're getting it. And we're getting that we became products of what we observed, which means that there was energy in place happening, and that when we observed something, that's the final fruits, the manifestation. We're wiring to something that's already done. So we are, unbeknownst to us, growing up in life, kind of looking backwards, wiring to things that have already happened. We need to let that go and turn ahead and look a different way. Does that make sense? It's a psychological thing, and not many people are going to get here. The material will tell us that again and again and again. It's just not for many. However, the many will think that they are the few. It's clever stuff. Alrighty, well, that's it for this video. I'm going to start working now on the Genesis one. I've been doing some, there's one part of Genesis I can't figure out, and when I get to it, I'll just talk about it as honestly as I observe it. Meanwhile, I'll go through everything else and show how it sequences. And I've been looking for it elsewhere, but I've lost interest in going through the Enuma Elish anymore. And I can see what's happening there, and it's not doing what this is. But the Enuma Elish is a standalone creation and monomyth, where Genesis is a creation and then monomyth after monomyth after monomyth after monomyth. It becomes a big network of monomyths. So they're different. And I think that in Genesis, because of that branching out, that it might be a directory or something like that, or a way to direct to other stories. You know, there's things in there like reference to Enoch. Yet the book of Enoch, which exists, is not in the Bible. So it's pointing to other places that we need to be open to the idea that there's something, out there else. But I don't think that, anyway. That's it for this video. I guess I'll just end it here. I'll get too wordy and just ramble all over the place. So I'll focus on the Genesis video. Love one another. See you in the next one.